Joan Burton.
Thank you, Lascian Corla. I think everybody knows that there is a great and understandable amount of anger out there among public servants and their families. And I think it is not that they are not willing to share the burden. They just resent being scapegoated and singled out to bear all the burden by Fianna Fáil. And I think it's important that many public servants did look to Fianna Fáil as a party that, if you like, was a one-nation party, which looked at the interests of both private and public sector employees, but now seems to be set in terms of its policy making to try and drive a wedge between different categories of workers. So a nurse married to a foreman on a building site, one in the eyes of Fianna Fáil is a lesser being, and it's the nurse who's the lesser person than the person who's in the private sector. And I think from a social harmony point of view, that's a great mistake, because we are facing into very difficult times as a country. And it is very clear that this government really lacks any comprehensive strategy in relation to the economy. We know that the Minister for Finance is in many ways an apprentice Minister for Finance and has been thrown in at the deep end. But he seems to really not, if you like, induce confidence, certainly not in the opposition in this House. But I think what is more serious is that his actions are not inducing confidence in the markets. They're not inducing confidence in the European Central Bank. And the Minister may have talked a good talk yesterday, that the comments of the Commission in relation to the Stability Pact were soft enough, and indeed they were. But really, they are just the usual comments that the Commission makes in relation to, in the past, much larger countries and much more powerful countries in Europe who have parted from the strict guidelines set out in the Maastricht and in the other agreements in relation to countries in the euro. And the Minister's speech today, it really lacks all conviction in relation to a coherent framework and programme to actually get people back to work, to get money moving in the economy, and by getting people back to work, keeping people in employment, and getting credit flowing in the economy, actually getting the economy off the ropes, where, to be honest, about 20% of the economy is at the moment. By getting it off the ropes, to getting us back into some kind of hopefulness, outward-looking, forward-thinking, which is what we need now. Essentially, the Minister has chosen as the key element of his strategy is, from an economic point of view, is deflationary. I mean, what this is going to do is to address the fiscal or part of the fiscal issue, but not the key economic issues. And it's the economic issue. I mean, to quote Bill Clinton, it's the economy stupid. And the economy stupid is actually about jobs, job creation, credit flow, people feeling, you know, as a British politician used to say long ago, the pound in their pocket. In this case, the euro in their purse. People having the confidence to do up their kitchen, paint the spare room, put down a new garden or something come the springtime when Dermot O'Neill comes on and Pat Kenny to talk about building a pergola or something like that. All those monies that people were very confident about spending, which employ local people, which buy goods from local shops, and which keep the flow of VAT and other taxes jingling in the government's cash registers. What the minister is doing is not to help and assist any of that. It's actually classically deflationary economics. Really recommend that, maybe the ministers, maybe the top officials, I'm sure they've read it already, but they really might read. There's a new paperback out on the Great Depression by Galbraith. And, you could take the minister's speech this morning, and it's only a short book, and you could take so many sections in what Galbraith had to say. And this government here is absolutely bound to, hand and foot, what the Hoover administration did to make the Great Depression worse, rather than what Roosevelt did. And I always found it very ironic that on his first budget speech, Brian Lenihan quoted, the famous quotation from Roosevelt that's now on the monument in Washington to Roosevelt and to Eleanor Roosevelt, saying, "We've nothing to fear but fear itself." And okay, the Fianna Fáil people, because maybe that was a basic Fianna Fáil instinct, they jumped to their feet to applause, because maybe in their heart of hearts, some of the Fianna Fáil people have this feeling in terms of trying to be a one-nation party, that they should be Rooseveltian. But everything in this speech and in these arrangements actually owes more to the Hoover administration, which made the Great Depression worse. It made the Great Depression worse. And unfortunately, this is about deflation. And, can I just remind the minister again, I don't know if they get the chance to read the Sunday papers much, or the other papers, but David McWilliams had a very pithy comment, which I want to quote in a recent article. And I think it's good. David McWilliams, the economist, said, "No economy has ever deflated its way to growth. No economy has ever deflated its way to growth. The most important thing to bear in mind is that companies closed due to lack of demand do not reopen when times are better, because they're closed. Therefore, the most crucial objective must be to preserve employment." And secondly, that very distinguished man of Irish letters and great admirer and defender of one of Fianna Fáil's leaders, Mr. Haughey, Anthony Cronin, Tony Cronin, wrote a couple of weeks ago, and he quoted, the old quote from Mr. Macabre about, annual income £20, annual expenditure 19 and 6, and the result for Mr. Macabre and the family, you remember, was happiness. Annual income £20, annual expenditure 28 and sixpence, £28 and sixpence, and the result for the family was misery. Now, Brian Lenihan has a very macabre-ish cast of mind in that speech that he has just delivered to us. And again, I want to quote from Mr. Cronin, from Anthony Cronin, when he says, "Shops, manufacturing businesses of all kinds were closing their doors," right? People were losing their jobs, and some were looking forward with understandable dread to losing their homes as well, right? It is apparently easy to confuse fiscal problems with economic ones. But by the grimmest and the most cruel of ironies, the measures taken to cure the fiscal crisis may finally have the effect of killing off the economy, decreasing the level of economic activity still more sharply. And Anthony Cronin goes on to say, "Every move which seems to offer alleviation of the one is a blow struck at the other. Every euro taken out of the economy, and as in the minister's speech, saved, if you like, is a euro less in circulation."